Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. It's Super Bowl Sunday, February 7th, and in this video we're going to talk about stock earning plays this upcoming week. The markets are open Monday. The day after Super Bowl should basically be a national holiday considering most people show up to work with maybe a slight hangover, but the markets will be open, so we'll be looking to capitalize on that, make some money going into a good 5-day trading week. So in this video, all we're talking about are stocks that have earnings this week. So a couple of resources that I use. One is a website called Earnings Whispers. So it's free to use. They do have a paid service. I don't pay for it. I just use the free stuff just to look at the companies that do have earnings. So if you click calendar from their homepage, you'll be brought to this page here. This little section right here, BMO is before the market opens, AMC is after market close. So you can see what stocks would have their earnings on that day, before or after. So Monday the 8th, Hasbro has it before the market opens. If you go to after, Chegg does, and if you click one of them, it brings up kind of their own little analysis on the stock, their description, their analyst ratings of whether they're going to beat, stay near, or miss on their earnings. So that's one resource. They also do have Twitter and Facebook pages. And then another resource I use too from Instagram is a page called Option Swings. They talk about like the implied moves from earnings based off where the calls and puts have been buying and selling at. And there's a pretty good one. So like, for example, we'll talk about Aurora Cannabis as they have earnings on Thursday. Their options basically imply a volatility of around 27%. So the higher percentage there, the bigger swings you would expect off earnings news. So those are a couple of resources you can use, and also Thinkorswim and most brokerages have earnings calendars on them that you can look up. Just about anything, any fundamental that you want to look at for a company. So now we'll just go to Thinkorswim and look at charts one at a time. So for each of these companies, we'll start with a weekly and then go to daily, and then for each company. So if you want to skip around, or you're only looking for a specific company, I'll put the timestamps in the description so you can just jump to them. But we'll start with Chegg. We'll go through the week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. There's not much on Friday to have earnings. But so for Monday, Chegg will be the first one. They have earnings after hours. So this is their weekly chart. As you can see, if you go back here into the March timeframe during the pandemic, Chegg does online resources, study books, study guides, tutoring. So obviously big business for them with the pandemic, with schools closing and everybody learning from home. So $25 up to $100 around now, which is 4 times move. But each of these little symbols on the bottom is when they had their previous earnings. So if you just look here, August 2019, the range for that week was $48 to $41, so $7 range on a $40 stock. That's almost 17%, so that's a pretty big weekly range. And if you look down here too, each one's pretty large. Here, $30, $6 range for 20% move. Obviously big, their first earnings right after the pandemic, 40 to 60 bucks. So a 50% move, which is great gains right there in a single week. But as you can tell too, they kind of run afterwards too and make their moves. So for upcoming earnings, right, I would assume that with the pandemic and everything going on, and some larger cities still not opening up, like Chicago, teacher unions really fighting back of not opening up, and they do hold a lot of political power, so you could see them staying closed for a while. Tutoring and resources, online resources for schooling, should stay hot and drive people to their services. So weekly here. So last week, pretty big red bar, low 90s to low $100 range, bounced off the 9 moving average, and then we get an inside bar this week. As you see, I set a mark here over 103. So if it goes over 103, I'll get an alert that says look to go long here. And my reasoning for that is if you just go to the daily chart, the close on Friday, so pretty good buying all last week, right? Stair stepping higher every single day. So it closed this high on Friday, it was 103.14. So if it hits around 103, I'll look to go long and hopefully get to 104, maybe even higher. I usually don't hold through earnings events. So if you're a long-term investor, right, the earnings are just another piece of news you're going to hold whether or not, but as a trader, day trader, swing trader, you're looking for the moves before and after. So this could be a run up Monday, and then once the news or the earnings report comes out and there's market sentiment on it and get a move one way or another, that's the next section to play. So I'm looking at for Monday, if price goes over 103, looking to long it during the day Monday, then selling before the earnings, and then seeing the market reaction and then playing after. The next one on Monday, Take-Two Interactive, right, became a higher price stock. This is a video game company, and obviously video games have been a big boom during the pandemic, especially GameStop just selling them, right? So we got a healthy uptrend here on the weekly throughout the years from pandemic lows 100, still didn't really drop to its lows in the previous year, 2019. But as you can see, again, earnings, big push, 130 up to 150. You know, here 165 up to 180, low 150s up to 180. So big moves after its earnings. So we'll go to now's time frame, kind of sitting here choppy above the 9, right? So we bounced off it area like each of the last 4 weeks. So could have some good support here to look for a push higher on solid earnings news, and kind of a sell-off day Friday. Didn't really like that 210 range, but look for Monday. Maybe say if it comes over 210, you look for it to take out this 211. It's only $1 on $200 stock, so that may not be the best risk reward. But other companies can move in sympathy on this, like EA Sport, or EA the company. Their EA Sports division is going to bring back NCAA football, which is a pretty big hit back in the day, especially if you watch Barstool. Big Cat was streaming it and had like the highest concurrent Twitch viewers for, you know, almost every single time he was streaming it, which was on a PS2 console, which is, you know, pretty crazy. So there'd be a huge draw there. So video games could get a resurgent off of good earnings on this as well. So those are two I'm looking at on Monday. For Tuesday, before the open, we have CGC, Canopy Growth Company, Cannabis Company. Obviously running since November on the election of, you know, Democrats backing cannabis reform, legalization federally. So 3-year chart do have previous highs in 2018 up in the 60s, and then just weekly here, right, $9 pandemic lows. Now we're sitting at $42.93. The last month kind of been a steady uptrend since 25, really sharp, definitely getting out of the normal average trading range here on the weekly. But you know, good earnings, you know, different political environment could keep sending this higher. We're well outside on RSI 80, but as we saw this week, we had some up in the 97, 98 range, so could see more buying here. Above do have some resistance on the weekly in this, you know, $47.50, $50 range. So we'll look to see what happens on this one with their earnings. I think with their earnings, it's more going to be like forward guidance of their on their earnings call, talking about how they're going to prepare for the future when cannabis, marijuana is legalized federally in America. This is a Canadian company, but they would have the infrastructure to be a major player. So kind of pull back the last 2 days after it hit highs on Wednesday the 3rd, 45.4. So maybe Monday this might sell off back to the 9, get some support, and look for a leg higher. Another company for Tuesday, Twitter, big one. Obviously tech's been high. It's been running the last you know, couple of weeks here. It's daily. Let's go to the weekly. So pandemic lows, right? Steady uptrend. Huge moves on its earnings here. So you can go all the way back to 2018, right? So 43 down to 33. That's almost 30%. It's almost every big candle has earnings plays around it. 40 to 33, you know, another 20% move. Big drop here in 2019 in October. 40 to 29.90, so $10 move, 25%. And then here recently, their most recent earnings, big drop, you know, 52 to 40. So another 25% right there. And then we do have this gap from the beginning of January when Twitter started restricting different users. You know, Donald Trump was kicked off the platform. Other political people, you know, a lot of people, that was their big draw. Obviously, Trump's the biggest draw, so it'd be interesting to see their user engagement. They're looking at having I just read an article. They're having a $1 billion quarter, but they're expecting user growth to stay flat and maybe drop. So how the market views that, we'll see. But obviously, the last 3 weeks, you know, pretty vertical here, and a lot of green thick bars, which is very, very bullish. And our size only at 64, so this could keep moving higher, maybe hit that $60 range for new all-time highs for Twitter. And then just look at the daily, right? Got this curl up, still closed above, Friday closed above Thursday high, so that's still a bullish sentiment for Monday. And so Monday, Tuesday could be some good trading days as anticipation on their earnings come out. And then we got Lyft LYFT. Oh man, I forgot to clear this chart. So they had a pretty solid move off their earnings back in November, beginning of November. They popped along with Uber. We'll talk about Uber too. They have earnings as well on Wednesday, so we'll talk about them here shortly. But so 25 pop up into the upper 30s and kind of been higher, moving higher, even though their growth numbers have hurt, right, as their revenues dropped, as less people have been able to go out, as the pandemic shut a lot down. But here you see all the way back, its IPO highs 88.6, and then here on the weekly we are moving into this 200 weekly exponential moving average up at the $55 range, so that could act as resistance. And if you look back at the chart, there is some consolidation, you know, in this $50-$65 range, especially the mid to upper 50s. Could find some resistance in there. And then just on their daily chart, kind of big hook, but last week steady uptrend, especially I think this basically on forward-looking guidance of cities opening up. Then we'll get into Wednesday. So ZNGA, Zynga, they're also like a mobile gaming company. So as you can see from, that's daily, and we'll go to the weekly real quick. But long term, last 3 years, 330 up to 11. So we're sitting pretty close to its all-time highs, with being at 1068. Their earnings plays, you know, still, you know, pretty volatile off news sentiment here. Like here, 10.5 down to 8.5. So 20% range. And then as you can see, just lately still positive uptrend, held the 50 on the weekly, moved higher, and just recently in the last 4 weeks respecting the 9 moving average. Last week, 2 weeks ago, I guess we'll say, for the weekend, so into January, that's a pretty ugly red bar, but we get an inside bar green for this past week. So I might actually set an alert at this, see if it crosses 1077, look for it to get back up to $11 this week before their earnings come out. Especially this hook's pretty good, right? So this be like a J hook pattern. So consolidation here, pushes higher, pulls back to retest the moving average, holds, and we start moving higher again. So I'll probably set an alert here, 1075, look to get over 11. We talked about Uber. Uber will be right here. So Uber's chart kind of similar to Lyft, obviously being competitors in the same industry. So their IPO numbers actually lower, 42.5. So we are sitting pretty close to Uber's all-time highs. As you can see, you won't see it here on the weekly, but on the daily there'll be a big gap from their earnings. But they hit 35, 45, still been this uptrend. Last week peaked down to touch 22, respected it. And then we got a big green bar, nice green bar today. So I would look for this potentially to take out its all-time highs at $60 as well. I'll probably put another alert there at 58.5. So if it opens higher during the week, look for it to go poke to 60 on the daily. Under Armour, it's kind of been beaten down the last few years. In the 27, they also have UAC, which is another just different listing. That was up in the $30 range, but as you see, February earnings, huge chain reaction, huge sell-off. So $20, and a month and a half later, we're down 761, hit low 715, at the beginning of the pandemic, and then picking up recently up in the 20s. Right, so some good consolidation. Pulls back to retest the 9, take off. That's pretty common. Our side's kind of overbought, but we are above this 200 EMA, so could look to pull back, maybe look to hold this 200. Maybe that 9 will come and touch it. Hold there, look to make a move higher. Just look at their daily, right? So it's really good, steady uptrend. Pull back into the 50, taken off last week. Big green candles. So I mean, is some exhaustion risk right here. So it wouldn't surprise me if at the beginning of the week this kind of pulls back, maybe down to the $20 range, and looks to move higher on its earnings. And then just a side note too, Wednesday, Thursday are pretty big earnings days for the major indexes, especially the Dow. Coke, GM have earnings on Wednesday, and then Thursday you have Pepsi, Tyson Food, Kraft, Kellogg, you know, a bunch of your home goods, you know, food industry companies, and then Disney's also on Thursday. We'll talk about them here in a second, but we'll talk about Roku first. So it's been on an absolute tear, right? The last 3 years, just wave after wave, moving higher and really getting exaggerated out here as they're, you know, really taking over streaming services, the hardware pairing with TVs. I mean, they've been killing it. They have big moves on their earnings as well. So obviously, price up here. We've been in the overbought range for, you know, almost 3 months, 4 months now. But I'd expect with their earnings to be pretty positive. I think guidance is another thing that a lot of people will be looking at, whether they can keep their subscriptions up once people go back to work. But I mean, hasn't really even done anything besides maybe retest the 9 since the summer. So chart's been pretty vertical. Could there be a pullback? Yes, but I think right now with such market exuberance, this could just keep cranking higher. So you have earnings here. I mean, this is kind of exaggerated price range, but you know, 10% move on its earnings there. Smaller reaction here, but definitely could get this kick, right? It's respected. It's touched back here just on the dailies into the 400. I didn't want a gap fill here, so it could be looking higher. So this could be also a for this week. Look to play this high, you know, off of 443. See if you can go take out 448, maybe hit 450. Disney. So option swings also, if you want to go look at their page, they did a pretty good write-up on Disney and what they're expecting. As you know, they have a pretty varied empire of assets that bring in them revenue, or that bring them in revenue. Jesus. But so like their parks, where they're going to open up, like Disney World's been open, Disneyland has not. So when they expect for that for forward guidance, they're streaming Disney Plus. Want to see their numbers, especially with WandaVision. The first couple episodes, you know, weren't that well received, but then as the story picked up, a lot of people are talking about it and liking it. I haven't watched it. I've been told to watch it, but so those numbers will be very interesting to see. So pandemic low 79, big sell-off back in February. So from 140 down to 80 as the pandemic went. That's kind of exaggerated. Whether or not that's all in the earnings, don't really know. But their last earnings here in November into the 120s, gaps up in the 140s, and we've continued higher. New all-time highs 183. We're about to touch that again. Pretty ugly week last week with the market sell-off on main indexes. You know, they blamed retail traders for that, but that's a lot of degrossing for funds. But big green bar again today, or excuse me, not today, but last week. So I'll probably set another alert here over 182. Look to take out 183.4 as their earnings keep going. And then lastly, we'll talk about ACB, Aurora Cannabis. So obviously you can see they've been beat down. This chart is exaggerated because right here on their earnings, they have done a reverse split. So the price has actually never been at 150. Let's see what that reverse split number is. So they did 12-to-1 split. So that number is really about $12 in comparison pre-split. So obviously in a downtrend long term, but since November legislation, right, we've been in an uptrend. Big spike in November, pull back to the 9, kind of get away from it, pull back, and now we're kind of curled back into it. Just got a little touch off last week, and looking to move higher. So this $15 range, right? This low 14's got to go first, 14.5 to this red candle, but then this 15.24, right? With this line is a 50 week moving average. See if you can get in there. We do have some volume consolidation up in the $16 range. See how they look for going forward with legalization. And then on their daily chart, 2 red candles last 2 days, similar to CGC. Probably look for this to come back in and touch around 12.5 and maybe move up higher. But ACB will move on CGC's earnings before market open on Tuesday, so that is something to look at if this is a hold for you, or you plan on playing it later in the week. But a lot of earnings plays, a lot of volatility on the earnings potentially for this week, so could get some good moves in the market. So that's 11 stocks that I'm looking at this week for their earnings. If you're looking at anything else, please let me know in the comments. Also, if you want to, you can type in the comments who you want to win the Super Bowl. I'd like the Chiefs to win, but it's never a good idea to bet against Brady. But anything you got for me, let me know. If you want me to look at a certain company, just type it in the comments. And if you're getting anything out of this, please like and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one.